Dear learners, welcome you all to e-learning platform. We are in week 8. In this week you will learn a play, the genre of which is comedy. The title of the play is The Way of the World, written by William Congreve. Me, Faisal Ahmed, with you throughout these lectures. Let's begin. In this week, the lesson has been divided in four sections. In lesson 1, you will learn Biography of William Congreve. In lesson 2, you will learn Introduction to The Way of the World, a comedy. In lesson 3, you will learn the text summary, and in lesson 4, you will learn the characters, plot, and settings of the drama. Lesson 1, Biography of William Congreve. William Congreve, born on January 24, 1670, in Bardsey, near Leeds, Yorkshire, in England, and he died on January 19, 1729, in London. He was an English dramatist who shaped the English comedy of manners through his brilliant comic dialogue, his satiric portrayal of the War of the Sexes, and his ironic scrutiny of the affectations of his age. His major plays were The Old Bachelor, published in 1693, The Double Dealer in 1693, Love for Love in 1695, and The Way of the World in 1700. Early life of Congreve. In 1674, Congreve's father was granted a commission in the army to join the garrison at Youghal in Ireland. In April 1686, he entered Trinity College, Dublin, where he received his MA in 1696. He studied under the distinguished philosopher and mathematician St. George Ashe, who also tutored his elder schoolfellow and ultimate lifelong friend Jonathan Swift. It was probably during the Glorious Revolution between 1688 and 89 that the family moved to the Congreve home at Staton in Staffordshire. Congreve's first work and collaboration. When he was 17, Incognita, or Love and Duty Reconciled. He quickly became known among men of letters, had some verses printed in a miscellany of the same year, and became a protege of John Dryden. In that year, Dryden published his translation of the satires of Juvenal and Perseus, dated 1693, in which Congreve collaborated, contributing the complimentary poem to My Dryden. Literary career of Congreve. It was in March 1693 that he achieved sudden fame with the production at the Theatre Royal, Drury Lane, of The Old Bachelor, written, he said, in 1690 to amuse himself during convalescence or recovery. Warmly heralded by Dryden, who declared that he had never read so brilliant a first play, though it needed to be given the fashionable cut of the town. It was an enormous success, running for the then unprecedented length of a fortnight. His next play, The Double Dealer, played in November or December at Drury Lane, but did not meet with the same applause. Literary career continues. Love for Love almost repeated the success of his first play, performed in April 1695. No further dramatic work appeared until March 1700. When Congreve's masterpiece The Way of the World was produced with a brilliant cast at Lincoln's Inn Fields, though it is now his only frequently revived pitch, it was a failure with the audience. However, it was his most appraised work after his death. Later life. The rest of his life he passed quietly enough, being in easy circumstances, thanks to his private income, the royalties on his place, and his not very exacting post in the civil service. Lesson 2. Introduction to The Way of the World. The Way of the World, comedy of manners in terms of genre, is in 5 acts by William Congreve, performed and published in 1700. The play, which is considered Congreve's masterpiece, ridicules the assumptions that governed the society of his time, the Restoration era, especially those concerning love and marriage. The plot concerns the efforts of the lovers Millamant and Mirabell, the major characters, to obtain the permission of Millamant's aunt for their marriage. Despite a scheme that goes awry, and after several misunderstandings and other complications are cleared up, the two finally obtain her consent to get married. Lesson 3. Text summary. Before the play begins, a number of important events have taken place in the lives of the main characters, which Congreve reveals throughout the play. Arabella's first husband, Language, has died and left her his fortune. She begins a secret affair with Edward Mirabell, the hero of the play. They end the affair and she gets married to a man Mirabell has selected, Fainall, because Mirabell is afraid that they will conceive a child out of wedlock. Congreve never explains why Mirabell just doesn't marry her. Mirabell and Mrs. Arabella Fainall remain good friends after the affair ends. Mirabell begins courting or affair with Mrs. Fainall's cousin Millamant, who lives with Millamant's aunt and Mrs. Fainall's mother, Lady Wishfort. To gain Wishfort's favor for his marriage to Millamant, Mirabell flatters Wishfort and lavishes much attention on her. Wishfort becomes convinced that he loves her and falls for him. However, after Wishfort's best friend Mrs. Marwood reveals what Mirabell was up to, her feelings for Mirabell change from love to hate. Now she will not grant her permission for Mirabell to marry Millamant, an important problem because she controls Millamant's £6,000 dowry. Excuse me. The night before the first scene of the play, the first time Mirabell has gone back to Wishfort's house since she found out his plan. Wishfort unceremoniously dismisses Mirabell from her Cavil Night Club in front of Millamant, who doesn't stand up for him, and a number of other people. Undiscouraged, Mirabell has already begun hatching a plan to coerce Wishfort into accepting the marriage, a plan that Millamant learns all about through Faisal. While all this is going on, Fainall has been having an affair with his wives, and Lady Wishfort's friend. Lady Wishfort's friend, Mrs. Marwood. Mirabell is the only one who suspects that this is going on. Foible and Minching have witnessed the affair but have been sworn to secrecy by Marut. Unfolding in a single day, the play begins in the morning. Mirabell is waiting for word that his servant Waitwell and wishful servant Foible have gotten married according to his plan. In the meanwhile, he is playing cards with his enemy Fainall. Mirabell hints that he knows that Fainall and Marut are having an affair. Unfolding in a single day, the play begins in the morning. Mirabell is waiting for word that his servant Waitwell and wished-for servant Foible have gotten married according to his plan. In the meanwhile, he is playing cards with his enemy Fainall. Mirabell hints that he knows that Fainall and Marut are having an affair. But he also reveals to Fainall his love for both Milament's strengths and weaknesses of character. Hearing this, Fainall encourages him to marry her. Later, the two men are joined by Wheatwood and Petulant. Mirabell learns from the two that last night Wishford discussed her plan to marry Milament off to his uncle Sir Roguland in order to disinherit Mirabell from his uncle's fortune. We do not yet know that Sir Roland isn't a real person and he is in fact in disguise, and that this is all actually part of Mirabell's plan. Mirabell's plan is going well until Marut, while holding in a closet, overhears Mrs. Fainall and Foible discussing Mirabell's entire plan and learns exactly what he is up to. She shares this news with Fainall and they concoct a plan to ruin Mirabell and blackmail Wishford. Summary continues. That same afternoon at Wishford's house, Milament also accepts Mirabell's proposal and rejects the proposal of Sir Wilful, whom Lady Wishful wanted her to marry. Together, Marut and Fainall begin to counteract Mirabell's plan. They reveal Foible's betrayal and Sir Rowland's true identity, who is Waitwell, to Wishford, and Fainall has Waitwell arrested. He threatens Wishford that unless she surrenders her fortune, including Milament and Mrs. Fainall's shares, he will reveal Mrs. Fainall's affair with Mirabell to the town, which would bring great disgrace to her family. He also demands that Wishford herself agree never to get married unless he permits it. Mrs. Wishford thinks she has found a loophole in Fainall's plan when she learns that Milament and Sir Wilful have agreed to get married. However, Fainall is undeterred because he can still gain control of Wishford and her wife's fortunes. All seems lost for Wishford and her family until Mirabell steps in. Before he offers his help, he has Wishford promise that she will let him marry Milament, which she readily does. Then he calls forward first Minching and Foible to reveal the affair between Fainall and Mrs. Marut. Wishford is dissatisfied that this is Mirabell's trump. This is Mirabell's trump card, but Mirabell has one more trick. He calls forward Waitwell, who brings with him a deed to all of LLI-Language's property. Before marrying Fainall, Mirabell and Arabella suspected that Fainall might try to cheat her. So Arabella agreed to sign over her fortune to Mirabell as a precaution. Summary insert. As a trustee, Mirabelle still controls her fortune, and the legally binding document thus preempts Fainal's claim on his wife's fortune. With Fainal and Marud beaten and Mrs. Fainal and Wishfort's fortunes and reputation saved, Sir Wilful releases Millamant from the engagement so she can marry Mirabelle and he can continue with his plans to travel. Mirabelle returns the deed to Arabella and tells her to use it to control a very upset and vengeful Fainal. Lesson 4. Characters, Plot and Settings. First of all, you will be familiar with characters in the play The Way of the World. The major character is Mirabelle, Millamant, Fainal, Mrs. Fainal and Lady Wishfort, and all the other characters are minor ones. So Mirabelle, a young man about town in love with Millamant. Millamant, a young, very charming lady in love with and loved by Mirabelle. She is the ward of Lady Wishfort because she is the niece of Lady Wishfort's long dead husband. She is a first cousin of Mrs. Fainal. Fainal, a man about town. A city dweller who lives in city. He and Mirabelle know each other well, as people do who move in the same circles. However, they do not really like each other. Fainal married his wife for her money. Mrs. Fainal, wife of Fainal and daughter of Lady Wishfort. She was a wealthy young widow when she married Fainal. She is Millamant's cousin and was Mirabelle's mistress, presumably after her first husband died. Mrs. Marud, Fainal's mistress, girlfriend. It does appear, however, that she was and perhaps still is in love with Mirabelle. This love is not returned. Mrs. Marud loves Mirabelle, but Mirabelle doesn't, whereas Fainal makes an affair with Mrs. Marud. Young Witude, a fop. He came to London from the country to study law, but apparently found the life of the fashionable man about town more pleasant. Fop is like a fashionable man. He has pretensions to being a wit. He courts Millamant, but not seriously. She is merely the fashionable belle of the moment. Petulant, a young fop, fashionable man, a friend of Witude's. His name is indicative of his character. Lady Wishfort, one of the central characters of this play, The Way of the World, Lady Wishfort. Lady Wishfort is a vain woman, 55 years old. Already old. She is at her old age, who still has pretensions to beauty. She is the mother of Mrs. Fainal and the guardian of Millamant. She is herself in love with Mirabelle, although she is now spiteful because he offended her vanity. So Lady Wishfort is a lady who loves makeup and who still tries to remain young. Sir Wilful Witude, the elder brother of young Witude, he is 40 years old and is planning the grand tour of Europe that is usually made by young men to complete their education. Is Lady Wishfort's nephew, a distant non-blood relative of Millamant's, and Lady Wishfort's choice as a suitor for Millamant's hand. Waitwell is Mirabelle's valet or assistant, At the beginning of the play, he has just been married to Foible, Lady Wishfort's maid. He masquerades as Roland, disguised as a Roland to make an affair, to make a fake affair with Mrs. Lady Wishfort, the old lady, and Mirabel's non-existent uncle, in disguise, and owes Lady Wishfort. Foible, Lady Wishfort's maid, married to Waitwell. Minching, Millament's maid, and Peg, a maid in Lady Wishfort's house. That's all the characters appeared in this play, The Way of the World. Now I will learn the plot. I have already discussed the plot in the introduction and summary, so please see the introduction and summary part in lesson 2 and 3 for the plot of this play. Lesson 4, settings of the play. Settings means the time and place. The time of the play is 1700 AD and the place is London, United Kingdom. The Way of the World premiered in early March 1700 in the theatre in Lincoln's Inn Fields in London. So now a glossary. Comedy of manners. What is comedy of manners? Comedy of manners, witty, cerebral form of dramatic comedy that depicts and often satirizes the manners and affectations of a contemporary society. A comedy of manners is concerned with social usage and the question of whether or not characters meet certain social standards. Often the governing social standard is morally trivial but exacting. The plot of such a comedy usually concerned with an illicit love affair or similarly scandalous matter, subordinate to the play's brittle atmosphere, witty dialogue, and pungent commentary on human foibles or weaknesses. The comedy of manners, which was usually written by sophisticated authors for members of their own category or social class, has historically thrived in periods and societies that combine material prosperity and moral latitude. Such was the case in ancient Greece, when Menander lived between circa 342 and 292 before Christ. Inaugurated new comedy, the forerunner of comedy of manners. So the forerunner or the pioneer of comedy of manners is Menander, lived in ancient Greece. Menander's smooth style, elaborate plots, and stock characters are imitated by the Roman poet Plautus, lived between 254 and 184 before Christ, and Terence lived between 186 or 185 and 159 BC, whose comedies are widely known and copied during the Renaissance. Great example of comedy of manners. One of the greatest exponents of the comedy of manners was Molière. Molière was a writer who satirized the hypocrisy and pretension of 17th century French society in such plays as L'École des Femmes, 1662, The School for Wives in English, and Les Misanthropes, the meaning of which is the misanthrope, who hates human, published in 1666. Comedy of Manners in England. In England, the Comedy of Manners had its great day during the Restoration period, although influenced by Ben Jonson's Comedy of Humours. The Restoration Comedy of Manners was lighter, difter, and more vivacious in tone. Playwrights declared themselves against affected wit and acute follies and satirized these qualities in caricature characters with level-like names such as Sir Fopling Flutter. The masterpieces of the genre were the witty, cynical, and epigrammatic plays of William Wycherley, The Country Wife, 1675, and William Congreve's The Way of the World, 1700, In the late 18th century, Oliver Goldsmith's The Stoops of Conquer, published in 1773, and Richard Brinsley Sheridan's The Rivals, published in 1775. The School for Scandal, published in 1777 by the same author, Richard Brinsley Sheridan, revived the form. That's the end of the lesson of week 8. Thank you very much for being with me throughout this lesson, and thank you for your patience.